Hi again, my name is Ismaelly Pena, I use they, them pronouns. Our project is called Mapping Resistance, the Fight for Cultural Preservation in Highland Park. We want to first thank AWAF and particularly Megan Horns for her mentorship. We want to thank the community leaders, Restorative Justice for the Arts, Oxy Arts and Avenue 50 Studio, for the community members that participated in our surveys and outreach, and most importantly, to those who continue to fight to preserve the culture and identity of Highland Park. According to a study by the Urban Displacement Project, between 2010 and 2015, over 1 million people in California experienced displacement, with communities of color and low-income households being the most impacted. So what is gentrification? A process of neighborhood change that includes economic change in a historically disinvested neighborhood by means of real estate investment and new high-income residents moving in, as well as a demographic change, not only in terms of income level, but also in terms of change in education level or racial makeup of residents. Displacement affects not just neighborhoods, their residents, but local businesses and cultural organizations. When a person, families, are forced to move from the spaces and places where they grew up, they're not only being forced to leave their domestic space, but also childhood memories, the images, scents, sounds, and all that grounds a person in a sense of home, community, and self. An example of such rupture is the erasure of this mural located on a cement wall that runs alongside the playground of Garbanza Elementary School, created by Daniel Cervantes, a mural that depicts and celebrates immigrant farm workers. Garbanza Elementary School teacher Marlon Lefebvre said that the mural was painted by Cervantes in 2004 with assistance from the Cesar Chavez Foundation, Hathaway Sycamore, and LA Best After School program. What you see here is whitewashing. An elementary school principal who did not grow up in the area whitewashed this neighborhood's much-loved mural, ostensibly because she was worried that it was attracting graffiti. First, they push out people, and now they want to erase the history of the walls we wanted to put up, said Cervantes in an article by The Guardian. Cultural and heritage components of communities, such as murals, cultural centers, community centers, theaters, etc., create the very fabric and makeup of our cities. In places like Los Angeles, these cultural histories create the layers of the very makeup of what attracts outsiders to our cities. A city that is multicultural, diverse, and not homogeneous. Let me say that again, not homogeneous. So, excuse me, with the goal of understanding what forces were at play in the conversation between gentrification and cultural erasure, we created a series of guiding questions, objectives, and activist research methodologies as a way of unearthing these hidden narratives that are taking place in many gentrifying cities, with a specific focus, as mentioned before, in Highland Park. Some of the key questions were, what has been the impact of gentrification in the cultural heritage of Highland Park? What tools has the community used to resist cultural erasure? What histories, visual, oral, etc., could be uncovered that are not often discussed in this region? So why mapping resistance? We were interested in creating resistance, mapping existing methods of resistance that are evident in the community and those individuals that are and have been active in the community resisting and trying to preserve Highland Park's cultural identity. The ultimate goal of the project is to provide a platform for the community to share stories, discuss strategies for cultural preservation, and document the rich intersectional history of the urban and cultural landscape of this region. So as a way of arming the resistance, as we often called it, we created this toolbox, which included site research, thick mapping, which will be discussed later, workshops and oral histories, and an action guide not only for the community itself, but for our own community, the design and architecture community. Another element that became quite important for us was the relationship of art and advocacy, often referred to as artivism. Traditional cartographic maps, census reports, or even journalism often fail to tell complete stories of struggle, violence, and erasure. Historically, communities have taken to the streets to be heard and to be seen. Activists practice like restorative justice for the arts, Proyecto Pregunta in Chile, and Highland Park's Oxy Art Gallery, amongst many, have tried to combine the grassroots methods, tools of activism with the medium of art to ask the hard questions, give voice to communities, not only at the moment of resistance and healing, but at the moment beyond that, in the moment of the archive and of documentation. As mentioned before, some of our key partners in the community were Avenue 50 Studio, Restorative Justice for the Arts, and Oxy Arts, which again have been pivotal in the development of our project. So I'm going to pass it on to Dante to tell us a little bit more about the methods that we've used in the development of such.
Hello, everyone. I'll be explaining more about the methods that we use throughout our research. We have divided the project in milestones as we have progress and try along the way. First, we started with the historic timeline of Highland Park. We began with the building our knowledge about the history of Highland Park. We track historical events throughout a series of layers such as culture, art and cultural heritage and art, social factors, economic events, transportation, housing, and public policy. What will become an interactive timeline, users are able to study relationships between historic events through different lenses or layers. This allows the users to come up with questions Questions such as what is the relationship between the start of Highland Park White Flag movement to the Chicano movement just 8 years later? Or how does the Chicano movement related to the opening of the Chicano-based art centers like Mexicano Art Center or Centro de Arte Público that equip local artists with the tools, the space, and the knowledge to express resistance through cultural art practices? Or how did the big economic events like the 2008 recession of the pandemic impacted the Highland Park Latino population? And finally, what stories do zoning and historic preservation statuses tell us about the neighborhood? Moving away from the desktop, we aim having in-person conversations with the public. We develop a survey for the public to answer questions revolving around neighborhood values, gentrification and erasure, the impact of the art and the culture, the policy and representation, and the future of Highland Park. We offer the surveys both in English and Spanish. The main objective of the survey was to gain a more holistic understanding of the community, their values, their fears, their struggles, their perception of gentrification and cultural erasure, and what is already being done in the neighborhood. We met with the community where we tried to engage with the locals, put posters and murals, supermarkets, and busy front gates along Figueroa Street, and gave out flyers to the persons to encourage digital participation when we were not there. The next method we explored was workshops. The aim was to provide residents with a critical look on a process that is seen as natural or inevitable, so that they can take action to steer the process in ways that are beneficial to the community, to the community's future development, and realizing each community's potential. The topics explored in the workshops are gentrification, cultural erasure, and the neighborhood's empowerment. Next, we documented the neighborhood and created a photo essay. We collected images around Highland Park that vary between materials, signage, typology, scales, and outdoor spaces. In response to different prompts, workshop participants are encouraged to create their own photo essays of the spaces they enjoy, reflect the values they hold, share the stories or emotions, and identify the key qualities of the neighborhood worth safeguarding, nurturing, and reclaiming. And finally, the workshop then moves into a mapping exercises that includes the collaging of images, texture, and objects. This activity encouraged the community members to act as active and essential team members in the planning process. This way, the community had a strong impact on the future of the neighborhood rather than their future being decided for them. Up next, Nisrin is going to continue with the presentation.
So now we'll move into a little bit of our findings and reflections on this kind of wild ride. Starting with the survey results, we were able to find a lot of unity around Chicano-based murals, like the Tenochtitlan mural or the Wall That Talks that depicts Chicano and indigenous figures and motifs. Participants found that the loss of iconic murals and art spaces led to loss of identity and tradition and also community division. The majority of participants also believed that gentrification is occurring in the neighborhood. We also tracked key demographic information such as race, age, whether they rent or own in Highland Park, and how long they've lived there, just to see the varied results. When asked if participants felt that they had a voice in changes that were taking place in their neighborhood, the majority strongly disagreed. We learned also a little bit about the places participants valued in the neighborhood, which we've censored here to protect their identities and respect those places and keep them Highland Park safe. We will never tell. You'll never know. We also wanted to ask, what does the future of Highland Park look like to you as the final question? Because so often these communities are put on the defense, and we wanted to know what the future would look like as somebody who lives in the neighborhood. And the responses were a mix of optimistic, cynical, and maybe defeatist attitudes. Some responded with some more optimistic responses as more Black and brown people with space to share and learn together about our culture and traditions, or undeniable indigenous vibrations. Others responded with answers such as, it will look like Silver Lake, or gentrified and abandoned. The next activity in these kind of findings was to create this kind of thick map that aims to superimpose analytical information with narrative testimonials from the community members. The map is organized similar to the timeline that has layers such as art and cultural heritage, demographics, housing, transportation, public policy, and economic factors. The aim is that it equips residents with the information and data to organize, make informed decisions, and honor Highland Park's specific history and culture. To expand our outreach, we use digital tools such as a website and social media, and that came with a little bit of pros and cons. The pros were that it connected us with more passionate community members around this issue of gentrification, and it also gave us a lot more survey results. The cons were that we quickly realized that we had to use very, very careful and sensitive language to talk to the community, and we also faced a little bit of backlash online that there was basically a lot of suspicion from members in the community about who we were, what our intentions were, many assumptions made up about us because of our background in architecture and design. Some thought we were developers in disguise, gaining intel for some new project. Some thought we were artists. And all these suspicions and hurt feelings are completely valid. I mean, they're gonna know more about the community that we ever will. And who knows who came before us and kind of stained that pathway forward between professionals and the community. So, and they're right, to those who have been displaced and are fighting displacement, architects are a part of this problem. So we realized our strength is really having conversations individually, in person, to share our own experiences with displacement, to create a middle ground and trust amongst them. And I think this experience really helped to rethink and strengthen our project. We really had to repivot here. allowing us to gain an understanding of how complex the issue of gentrification is, allowing us to grow as individuals who want to practice advocacy in architecture and the built environment. And the project really transformed from an exhibition we initially proposed to this question of how we can have the most impact on this issue of cultural erasure. With the collaboration of our community partners, the project expanded from there. So as we're reflecting today, we wanted to share some important tips and reflections for those of you who are interested in doing a community engagement-based project. We created this sort of community engagement triangle. So at your base, always prioritize lived experiences. Start by listening to all voices affected by the issue. Prioritize the voices that are often underrepresented and those who are affected by the issue the most, and always meet the community where they are. The next thing you need to do is some self-reflection. Who am I? What power do I hold? What are my subconscious biases? What institutions do I now represent? Climbing up, identify what your tools are for advocacy. What tools and resources do I have access to, and how could they be applied here? Next, target advocacy for whom? Who has power, who does not? Be very specific. Then identify your allies. Who can we rely on to advocate with us? That could be people in your personal network, your professional network, and grassroots activists. Always do your research on grassroots activists who are actually doing the work in the neighborhood, and the work will speak for themselves. And then finally, action. How, doing everything that we've just done, how can I make an impact and let community members lead conversations and support them? Never come from this place of, I'm saving the community. You guys are partners, you are support for the community. And so with all the research and knowledge we've accumulated in this project, we decided to accompany our interactive timeline and maps with an actions resource guide to help arm the resistance. This guide consists of actions that combat cultural erasure via gentrification through three main realms: actions at the community level, actions at the built environment and design level, and public policy and at the municipal level. These will include actions such as inclusionary zoning that would elevate residents and community organizations to partners in planning to promote housing affordability and public space. Things like rehabilitation and preservation in design and development practices to help retain community character. And also to leverage communities' power over developers through the use of a community benefit agreement that would potentially gain residents more funding for community programs, below market units, and employment of local residents. We also wanted to interrogate the current typical planning process for building design and call you guys out a little bit more. So at what point is the community typically involved in the design process of a building, especially a community-based building? Are you waiting till DD, CD? Are you presenting renders to the community? Because that can be a little intimidating. How many times do designers and planners meet with community members? And how do designers collect input from the community and respond to that input? And so we wanted to advocate for some planning process reform where you meet with community leaders during programming or early design phases, host workshops aimed at discovering significant community values, spaces, and ideas. They have ideas too. The community will always, always know more than we do about their neighborhood. And check in periodically as the design progresses. Trust takes transparency, trust takes communication, and trust takes following through. So what we've presented today is a snippet of the project, and the project will continue to grow this summer with the Mural Reparations campaign with Restorative Justice for the Arts. That's going to be, it includes exhibits of local artwork to fundraise for local art protections, legal fees for artists, and will be located at Oxy Arts. We'll also be doing workshops in combination with the Mural Reparations campaign to help activate the events and continue to build our archive. That is Mapping to Resistance. Thank you.